You know me, guys. I deal in the cold, hard truth.
Benjamin Franklin Chang, ready to deal out the truth.
The rarest title in Crusader Kings 3 is not the Archduchy of Austria, it's not the Outremer Empire, it's not the Latin Empire. Oh no. The truly rarest titles in CK3 cannot be created. Today we are diving into the history of the absolute rarest titles in Crusader Kings 3. Seatbelts on, make sure you stay hydrated.
You want everything?
And let's do this.
Let's do this.
Have you ever masturbated in the study room?
Number 1. Armenian Principalities, 867. In the 9th century, Armenia did not have a king. It had something arguably more interesting, the Prince of Princes. The title, known in Armenian as Ishkan, literally meant prince. It wasn't just ceremonial, it was a political solution to a very delicate situation. Armenia was under the authority of the Abbasid Caliphate, but it wasn't fully conquered in the traditional sense. After the Arab conquests of the 7th century, Armenia became a frontier province of the Caliphate. The Abbasids did not attempt to erase Armenian nobility, instead, they ruled indirectly. Powerful Armenian dynasties were allowed to keep their lands as long as they paid tribute and remained loyal. To manage this balance, the Caliphate recognized one leading Armenian noble as the Prince of Princes. He acted as the intermediary between the Armenian lords and Baghdad. He collected taxes, he coordinated military obligations, and in return, he was acknowledged as the foremost authority in Armenia. The most famous of these princes was Ashot I from the house of Bagratuni. In 862, Ashot was officially recognized by the Abbasid Caliph as Prince of Princes of Armenia. This recognition gave him legitimacy not just among Armenians, but in the broader Islamic political world. It strengthened the Bagratuni dynasty and positioned them above rival houses like the Artsruni, who were the rulers of the province of Vashpurakan at the time. But here's the brilliance of it. Ashot used Abbasid recognition to consolidate Armenian unity. While outwardly loyal to the Caliphate, he steadily built internal support, reinforced noble alliances, and strengthened the Armenian Church. By 885, the political reality had shifted so much that Ashot was crowned King of Armenia, with recognition from both the Abbasid Caliph and the Byzantine Emperor. And that's what makes the Armenian Principalities so rare in CK3. You can't just form the Armenian Principalities because they only exist in the 867 stardate. Number 2. Sakya Trizin, 1178. The title Sakya Trizin literally means Sakya throneholder. It is not a kingly crown in the European sense, but in medieval Tibet, religious authority and political power were inseparable. To control a great Buddhist school was to control land, monasteries, wealth, and influence. To understand the weight of that title, you have to understand Tibet's religious landscape. By the 12th century, Tibetan Buddhism had developed into several major lineages: the Nyingma, the Kagyu, and the Sakya, with the Gelu school emerging later in the 15th century. The Nyingma school traced its roots back to the earliest transmission of Buddhism into Tibet during the 8th century, under the great Tibetan emperor Trisong Detsen, who invited Indian masters like Padmasambhava to establish Buddhism in Tibet. The Kagyu school mainly emphasized meditation and was introduced in Tibet by Marpa Losawa. The Sakya school focuses on development and completion stage practice. Founded in 1073 with the establishment of Sakya monastery, the tradition was led exclusively by the Kön family, not by reincarnate lamas but through hereditary succession. The Kön clan claimed ancient noble origins, and over time they fused spiritual authority with aristocratic legitimacy. Religion and bloodline reinforced each other. In the 13th century, the Mongols swept across Eurasia, forging the largest continuous land empire in history under Genghis Khan. Tibet, divided and politically fragmented, could not resist military. The Mongol rulers provided military protection and political authority. In return, clansmen of Kern served as spiritual teachers to the Mongol elite. In Tibet, power was not always taken with armies. Sometimes it was inherited through scripture, lineage, and the quiet authority of a throne inside a monastery. Number 3. Great Liao, 1066. When people think of medieval East Asia, they think of the Song, maybe the Tang, maybe even the Mongols. But before the Mongols reshaped the map, there was the Great Liao. Founded in 916 by the Khitan leader Yelu Abaoji, the Liao dynasty was something radically different from the Chinese dynasties to its south. The Khitans were a semi-nomadic people from the Mongolian steppe. They rode horses, lived in mobile camps, and organized themselves through tribal aristocracy, not Confucian bureaucracy. Instead of simply conquering northern China and ruling it like steppe khans, they created a dual administration system. The northern regions of the empire were governed according to steppe traditions, preserving Khitan customs and tribal structures. The southern regions, largely sedentary and ethnically Han Chinese, were governed using Chinese-style institutions. Two systems, one empire. In 947, the dynasty officially adopted the name Great Liao, claiming imperial legitimacy equal to any Chinese dynasty. They controlled vast territory from Manchuria and Mongolia down into northern China, including the strategically vital 16 prefectures near modern Beijing. Their greatest rival was the Song dynasty. Instead of destroying the Song outright, the Liao forced them into a diplomatic relationship formalized by the Chenyuan Treaty of 1005. The Song paid annual tribute, effectively acknowledging Liao as an equal, if not superior, in power. Culturally, the Liao blended worlds. They practiced Buddhism widely, particularly in its Chinese forms, while maintaining shamanistic traditions of the steppe. They even developed their own writing systems, the Khitan large and small scripts, to solidify imperial identity. The Great Liao was not simply a barbarian dynasty ruling China, it was a hybrid empire, steppe and sedentary, tribal and bureaucratic, nomadic and imperial. And its political innovations laid the groundwork for later dynasties like the Jurchen Jin and ultimately the Mongol Yuan. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more content from me. Number 4. Jin, 1178. The Great Liao proved that the steppe people could rule northern China. But their bitter rivalry with the Jurchens led to their downfall. North of Koryo, in the forests and river valleys of Valheim, lived the ancestors of the Jurchens, descendants of the ancient Mohe tribes. Unlike the Khitans of the open steppe, the Mohe were forest peoples. They hunted, fished, farmed millet and wheat, and lived in fortified villages. Their world was rivers and dense woodland, not endless grasslands. Over time, these tribes unified under the Wanyin clan. In 1115, their leader, Wanyin Akuta, proclaimed the Jin dynasty. What followed was astonishing. Within just a few years, the Jurchens crushed the Khitan Liao state, the very empire that had once dominated them. By 1125, the Liao dynasty was gone. The difference between the two peoples mattered. The Khitans had been more traditionally nomadic, mounted aristocrats ruling through mobility and tribal confederation. They governed their Chinese subjects through a dual system, but remained culturally steppe at heart. The Jurchens, however, were more sedentary. Their society was clan-based but agriculturally rooted. When they conquered northern China, they adapted quickly. They moved their capital south, adopted elements of Chinese bureaucracy, and ruled millions of Han-Chinese subjects directly. In 1127, the Jin captured the Song capital of Kaifeng in what became known as the Jinkang Incident, humiliating the Song dynasty and forcing it to retreat south. Northern China now belonged to the Jin. Yet, the Jurchens did not simply become Chinese. Like the Liao before them, they were a conquest dynasty, but one more deeply embedded in sedentary governance. For over a century, the Jin stood as the dominant power of northern China, until a new storm gathered beyond the steppe. Number 5. Guiyi Prefecture, 867. In the far northwest of China, beyond the fertile heartlands and deep into the deserts of the Hexi corridor, there once stood a loyal outpost of a dying empire. It was called Guiyi Prefecture. The name Guiyi means return to righteousness or return to allegiance, and that name tells you everything about its origin. In the mid-8th century, the Tang dynasty was shattered by the Anlushan rebellion. As the empire weakened, the Tibetan Empire surged eastward, conquering vast stretches of territory, including the strategic city of Shazhou, modern-day Dunhuang. For decades, the region remained under Tibetan control. Then, in 848, a local Chinese general named Zhang Yichao led a rebellion against the Tibetans. He reclaimed Shazhou and the surrounding territories and pledged renewed loyalty to the Tang court. Thus was born Guiyi Prefecture, a frontier military governorship claiming allegiance to the Tang dynasty, even as the Tang power itself was collapsing. Geographically, this region was crucial. The Hexi corridor was the gateway between China and Central Asia. Whoever controlled it influenced Silk Road trade, diplomacy, and military movement between worlds. But Guiyi was isolated. After the Tang dynasty formally fell in 907, China fractured into competing kingdoms during the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. Yet, in the far west, the rulers of Guiyi continued to operate semi-independently, maintaining Chinese administrative traditions while navigating pressure from surrounding powers, including Tibetan factions, the Uyghurs, and later the rising Tangut state of Western Xia. The Zhang family ruled first, followed by the Cao family, who maintained control for generations. They sponsored Buddhist art and manuscripts, and it is under their rule that the famous Dunhuang cave manuscripts were preserved, offering an extraordinary window into medieval Eurasian culture. Guiyi Prefecture was not a great empire. It was a desert stronghold eventually absorbed by the next rising power of the region. Number 6. Genoa and Pisa, 1178. By 1178, power in the Mediterranean did not belong only to kings. It belonged to cities. Genoa and Pisa were not kingdoms. They were maritime republics, self-governing city-states built on trade, ships, and ruthless competition. Both cities rose during the 11th and 12th centuries as naval powers in the Western Mediterranean. Their wealth came from commerce between Europe, North Africa, and the Levant. Politically, neither was ruled by a traditional monarch. Instead, they were governed by elected officials alongside councils nominated by powerful merchant families. These weren't feudal aristocrats living off land. Religion played a central role. Both cities were fiercely Catholic and deeply involved in the Crusades. Their fleets transported crusaders to the Holy Land, and in return they received trading privileges, ports, and entire quarters in cities like Akko and Constantinople. But Genoa and Pisa weren't allies, they were rivals. Their competition for control of Mediterranean trade routes led to repeated naval wars, culminating in major conflicts that would eventually see Pisa decline and Genoa rise as one of the dominant commercial powers of medieval Europe. Was I successful in convincing you to play one of these titles? Let me know in the comments. Also make sure to mention me your favorite title as well while you are there. Thank you for watching this video, stay safe and see you next time. Bye.